Hey guys, welcome back to another How to Crucible with your boy, Absolute Quality. Today we're going to be taking a sneak peek at the Skyburner's Oath, the exotic scout rifle, or the exotic slug rifle, I should say. So my initial opinion with Skyburner's Oath, playing with the weapon, it was interesting. I liked playing with the weapon, but then again, I didn't like playing with the weapon. There were times where I was having a blast, I keep hitting my desk, but then there was also times when I didn't have any blasts at all. I was having a very terrible time. There were some games like that. Most of the games didn't end too bad. I ended up with more than a 2 KD in a lot of the games, but there were some games where it was super evident that playing against really good players was not going to cut it. This gun was not going to cut it in any capacity. But whenever I was playing against noobs and such like that, playing against people that weren't actually very good at the game or just weren't, the top tier player that I usually play against or the ones that I want to play against, I annihilated them. I did very well against those kids. This gun actually, I finished this gun when the Iron Banner popped up this week, and I played a couple matches in the Iron Banner, and I couldn't record those games. First of all, we literally got bodied every single game, solo queuing into competitive modes, how that goes. But also, I wasn't doing the things I was doing in quick play. Playing against people that are actually competent and are actually trying and want to play against you and do well against you, this gun is not going to cut it. It's just from my experience, playing against people that know what they're doing, they're going to outgun you every single time with Graviton Lance or Vigilance Wing. It just cannot compete against those two. So let's go ahead and take a quick peek at the stats. So for impact, it's pretty good. The initial impact when it hits them is not the same as your normal scout rifle. That's why I call it slug rifle, because it hits them. It's a bullet, but it's also an explosive at the same time. It's kind of like explosive rounds, but not at the same time, because it's not explosive rounds. It's just a massive ball of fire that hits them and blows up. It's super interesting to play with, so it is kind of fun because it's an exotic, so it is fun to play with, obviously, because it's a little bit different from your normal mechanics of any regular scout rifle. So it does a bit of damage when it hits you. Moving on to the ranges, so let's go ahead and talk about short range first. So for short range, no. I mean, it's fun when you're playing against players that are bad. It's fun to just willy-nilly hold the gun on the non-aiming feature and just literally just start shooting your heat-seeking missiles at them and doing it that way. But it's not a viable solution against someone with a pulse, or not pulse, but a submachine gun. Anyone with a submachine gun and any competency whatsoever is going to completely outgun you every single time in short range. Because first of all, if you're aiming down your sight, the gun is shooting slower. And then second of all, if you're not aiming down the sight, the bullets are traveling slower. So you're not really having a great time trying to kill someone up close. It's kind of fun and, exhilarating if you just want to run around and blow people up with your fire gun. But other than that, it's not that great at short range. So for short range, I am going to give it a 5, mainly due to the fact it doesn't compete with anything. It's just there for the funsies. Moving on to long range. Long range, I'm going to give it a 7. Long range was good in the terms of fighting off people with a normal scout rifle. When you were scoped in and you were doing like the slow, high-hitting damage scout rifle, it worked. It did some damage and it was able to kill people off head glitches and stuff like that. But it doesn't compete with any of the higher tier scout rifles or even pulse rifles, to that fact. A lot of the scout rifles, like even, I want to say, I've been killed by like Tango Down. Is Tango Down one? Tango Down? I feel like I've done that weapon before or something. Maybe I haven't done that weapon. Yeah, I haven't done that weapon. But weapons like Does Not Compute, the early Crucible one, and then you've got guns like the Manananan or your Tone Patrols or Frontier Justice, or even like your Pallades Corrector or the Micro Tool. It is not going to compete against any of those any of those scout rifles. And then for pulse rifles, it's obviously going to get absolutely murdered by a lot of those. And then even auto rifles, submachine. It's good when you're playing against people that aren't good, is what I'm saying. A lot of these games I played in quick play. I actually went into Iron Banner, like I said before. I couldn't record those, so I went back to quick play because I was playing against really good people, and then when I went right back to quick play, I was playing against the scrubs. So I don't want to say that I'm forging these weapons, and all that stuff. I'm forging them, But if I got to play in the same environment, and when I went to Iron Banner, it completely changed how I had to play with the gun. It completely changed everything about using it and maneuvering with it. So I had to go back to quick play to keep going with the same way that I was using it initially. But even in some quick play games, I got up against people that were really good, and they just absolutely annihilated me. So it really didn't matter with this weapon. It feels there, but it's not. It definitely is not. So long range does get the 7. Moving on to our next stat is stability and handling. So for stability, it's pretty good. It's pretty easy to hold with the recoil. The recoil isn't too bad. And then handling, it moves around pretty quickly. The bar is pretty high up there, so you're not going to have a whole lot of issues with moving slowly around the map. You can move pretty quickly. Reload speed, nothing to scoff at, nothing to even highlight at least. Rounds per minute 200 and the magazine is 18. Now the rounds per minute changes depending on which firing mode you're doing, which is in our perks. So let's look at perks. So for the perks, or I guess the only perks that I really want to talk about for this exotic is the first one, which is the intrinsic, which is slug rifle, and then the third one, if you saw in the beginning, which is for the Empire. We'll do those two. So for slug rifle, it basically means that this weapon lobs large explosive seeking slugs when you're firing from the hip. When you're aiming down the sights, the slugs travel fast and straight with higher damage and a lower rate of fire. So basically, if you're not aimed in, you're going to be shooting slower rounds, but it comes out of the gun a lot faster. So you're shooting, basically you're just lobbing things, like it says when you lob large explosive seeking slugs, and they kind of seek. So when they're seeking, they literally, if you have them somewhere in the reticule for the hip fire option, it's going to try and seek them. Now, if they're moving, they can obviously evade these bullets. They can easily evade these bullets, actually, if they're moving. If they're like a warlock and they're jump moving, or if they're a hunter and they're rolling out of the way, they can easily get away from this. Even Titans with their jump. There's their strafing jump, or not their strafing jump, but their just normal slide jump, glide jump, or whatever it is. I haven't played with Titan forever. But they can easily evade it as well. It's not very hard to. So if they aren't moving and you're shooting it like that, or you're like literally barrel stuffing them with it, it's actually kind of effective. But if they're moving, it's totally not effective at all whatsoever. And then with the aiming down your sight, you're shooting a lot slower, but the bullets are coming out like a normal scout rifle. So they're actually coming out at the velocity that you would imagine a scout rifle actually produces. So it does work in that capacity as an actual scout rifle, but it is a very lower fire rate than anything out there. I mean, it's probably akin to your Does Not Compute and your Frontier Justice. It is a slow shot, that is for sure. It is a very, very slow shot. And then for the Empire really doesn't take anything into the Crucible. It's just for the exotic itself. I mean, this is a Cabal weapon, so you are going to be doing a little bit more damage to the Cabal, in which this brings in the Phalanx option, and that, you know, you can shoot through their Phalanx shields and kill them. And so it actually is a really nice weapon if you are in some sort of strike or some sort of nightfall or the raid even, and there's like a fire buff or something, or you just want to get through the shields quickly, and then that is able to easily outkill those things. So it's effective in its own right in the PvE world, but we're talking about the PvP world. So for perks, I'm going to give it a 7. I'm going to give it a 7 for the slug rifle being unique. I'm not giving it anything for the Empire, because for the Empire has no implication whatsoever towards our PvP zone. But for slug rifle, I am going to go ahead and give it a 7 just because it's unique. The other ones really aren't that great, and they don't really add a whole lot of value to the weapon, other than the fact that you can't switch it around, and that's kind of why I don't like exotics right now, because you can't even change the perks. You can't even add perks to it and mess it around. I mean, they are completely stuck concrete, and it sucks. But for slug rifle, we're giving it a 7. Moving on to our effectiveness. Now for effectiveness, we have a couple calculations that need to be made. So first of all, we need to track our kills and assists and deaths. So for kills and assists, we got 326. It felt like a lot of the time I was getting assists. I mean, I remember a lot of the times I was actually full killing people, but it really felt a lot like I was just hitting people and then other people were finishing them off. So I really didn't feel a whole lot of insane kills in that respect. I felt like I had more assists than anything. And then for the deaths, I had 158 deaths. You add those up, we have 484 total engagements. For the KD, I had a 2.06. Now, I think a lot of those were assists. I don't think a lot of those were kills, just because it wasn't that effective, to be totally honest with you. I didn't feel like I was having a very, very OP weapon in my hands, murdering every single person. I was doing assists quite a few times. So let's go ahead and slap the equation on the screen for our numbers. So for our kills and assists on the top, we have 326, and then we're going to divide that by our 484, which is the total amount of fights I got into. And then we're going to divide those, and then we're going to multiply by 10 to get one number in front of the decimal, and then that is going to be a 6.7. So for our overall rating, we are going to just add those four numbers at the bottom. We're going to add them all up, then we're going to divide by 4 to get our average, and then for overall rating, we get a 6.4. The final score for Skyburner's Oath is a 32.1. Now let's go ahead and move on to the ranking system. So if you don't know about the ranking system, what I do is I have been reviewing a lot of weapons. This is actually the 73rd weapon. So what I do is I take the score that I just got, the 32.1 that's on your screen right now. That's going to go away right now. I use that number, and then I rank it against, first of all, its weapon class. So in this case, it's a scout rifle, so I'm going to rank it against the scout rifles, and then I'll rank it against every weapon I've done so far. So out of the 72 other weapons, I'm going to rank it against them and see where it stacks amongst all of the weapons I've tried in the Crucible. So for the scout rifles, this weapon is sitting actually really low in the scout rifles. It's sitting 12th, actually. It's sitting in the 12th position. It's actually one above the worst, which is 13, which is on your screen right now, which is, I believe it's Metronome 53. I believe that is the one. Yeah, Metronome. I didn't really enjoy Metronome. Metronome shot way too slow for me. For my playstyle, and I think a lot of people's playstyles in general. But yeah, it's an interesting gun. It's fun to use against just quick play members or quick play players, but it's not anything viable in your competitive modes. Like literally, Iron Banner is a no-go. I tried using this in the Iron Banner, and it just didn't work out. I mean, those kids were using Graviton Lance, Vigilance Wing. They had everything out. They had Uriel's Gift out. They were murdering me with all the really good high-tier weapons, and I literally couldn't do anything against it. So Skyburner's Oath is going to be sitting kind of far down there in the scout rifles. There are a lot of good scout rifles out there, so it does have to compete with a lot, but it's not a viable option for your competitive mode. And then for the entire list, because a 32.1 is actually kind of low for my list, it is going to be sitting at 45th, so it is quite far down the ranking system there. It's a scout rifle. It's fun to use, but it's just not something that if you're trying to be good at the Crucible, if you're trying to do well, if you're trying to get high kill gains, this really is not for you. Unless you find a newbie lobby and you know that you can absolutely roast these kids. Then go ahead and pull this out at your will. I mean, it is fun. It's fun to use. Don't get me wrong. It's fun to use. I liked using it. But it's not something that is going to help you do super well. So for my recommendation for this weapon, I would say use it if you want to have fun. If you just want to screw around with your friends, say your friends are in with you and you're playing the Crucible together, it would be a fun weapon to use because you'd be with them. Maybe you both pull it out, or maybe all, 6 of you, if you have 6 people, pull out the Skyburner's Oath and just cause a complete havoc. It would be kind of fun doing that. But if you're in a competitive mode and you want to actually do well, I would recommend pulling out a different scout rifle in general. I would recommend pulling out probably the Mida tool, or even, whipping out a different one that's sitting in that slot, and then use something to the likes of the Graviton Lance, or use Vigilance Wing, or, something that actually is going to get you somewhere in the competitive scene. Use that. I wouldn't use the Skyburners though. So thank you guys for watching this video. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, go ahead and hit the like button. And if you'd like to see more content from me, go ahead and check out the channel. And if you like what you see there, go ahead and subscribe, and I'll see you later.